she said it's almost like food poisoning, kind of like that's
Oh, it's terrible.
I lost some weight.
yeah, probably.
Jim, you're always looking on the bright side of things. You are always looking on the bright.
When everyone's like, I got a stomach flu, I'm like, well, I don't
Down a
want
couple.
one, but if I did, at least there's one benefit.
I mean, after my double taco date there, I wouldn't mind having a little baggage.
Crumble cookies.
There's a line in Devil Wears Prada about that. Like I'm one stomach flew away from my goal weight or something.
Mhm.
One flew.
Something like that.
Hello and welcome to Table for Five with no reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation. Hello, and thank you for taking a seat at the table. This is a episode that we are going to be talking about intimacy on. So we might be a little more graphic. Is that what you'd say?
R-rated?
R-rated? I was going to say
Probably
Speak for
PG.
yourself.
We're not going to be
PG-13.
vulgar.
PG-13.
We're probably going to be a little more
yourself.
PG-13. Yes.
Probably not R.
Yeah. We can't even get to R, really. That's how our lives are going. But anyway, if you happen to have children around in the car with you and you don't want them to hear about these things, save it for their earbuds while you're doing the dishes. Anyway, at the table tonight, I have Rachel.
Hey.
Jen.
Hello.
Tabitha.
Hello.
Kim.
Hi there.
And I am Jamie. Today we're going to be talking about intimacy and how that's kind of changed for us as women with becoming parents, and especially for us becoming parents of kids with disabilities, and just in general how that affects everything within our relationships. I was thinking about this the other day, and Tabs has talked about the like spoon theory on the podcast before.
Yeah.
But Brene Brown has this thing that's going around a lot right now, in a lot of reels and TikToks about the percentage. So it's like you and your spouse check in on each other each day, or when the kids get home from school, and the wife can be like, I'm at 20% today. I'm just done. Work was killer. And the husband's like, all right, I got 80% in me. I can take over. And I thought about, and I mean, that's more to do with like parenting and just being like there for each
Present.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Present. And like, but just immediately right off the bat, as a special needs parent, and we have some single parents here at the table, like for one, you don't have someone to do that with, or if you do, like we're starting at a 10%, both of us, because by the time we get going at our day, we've done packing the lunch, my son's throwing a fit about going to school, getting him in the car, walking him to the door because he has to meet up with a para to walk in. Even if everything goes well, it's like still I'm like, okay, well, I'm starting my day with 10% every day. Like I'm already done. And the fact that I probably didn't sleep much the night before. And so I just thought about that in the realm of like, what else do I have left over to give my spouse? So I don't know. For me, it's something I need to work on with my husband, is being more expressive of love and stuff, and that in general. I'm not really a like touchy feely person. I don't know if you guys but I'm not, like I didn't grow up in like, I mean, I grew up one of six, and me and my siblings are really close, and we like would hug and cuddle and stuff like that. But my parents weren't necessarily that way. And so it's already like a reach for me to be that way for my husband. But then on top of that, I'm exhausted. And then taking that to a whole nother level of like being intimate half the time, I'm like, whoa, like I'm just trying to survive here.
Yeah.
And I think also as women, like our bodies ebb and flow with that want of those things, where it's like, I'm all right without it, buddy. Sorry. Like it's hard. So I don't know. What are your feelings on this, Tabs?
Yeah. When I was thinking about intimacy, I thought about it in two brackets, kind of like physical intimacy, sex, obviously, and then like how you feel about yourself, like, wanting to be sexy, wanting to dress up, because there's a certain like level of, if you get ready, if you do your hair, if you put something sexy on or something you feel confident in, already that's like a opening of the door to the possibility, I guess.
Yeah, to the other. It's like
Yeah.
Opening something.
Yeah.
Well, as women too, we need that mind. We have to be like in them. It's like,
Yeah.
you gotta wear the clothes to play the role,
Yes. And so I thought about like the differences in just my own caretaking of myself, or want or desire to like, I used to get dressed for court. I used to just be in a profession where the expectation was to be presentable. And so I had to have some level of that. I mean, it definitely dropped off after I had my kids. Like there was less effort being made. But now it's like I don't go to an office. I don't have any expectation to put on regular pants even every day. I'm like in leggings central over here. And I never thought I would be like that type of mom. Not that I have anything against leggings, so they're
I
super
was like,
comfortable. Yeah,
you
they're super
better be
comfortable. I'm all
careful
about it.
moving
Sweatpants.
forward.
No, but you know what I mean? Like I thought that I would be required to be out of the house and doing things every day that required like a suit jacket and pencil skirt or whatever. So that has changed in my own personal appearance and how I feel about myself, whether I feel sexy or whether I feel like I have the desire to feel like a woman, period. And then the second part of it, the energy, the effort. And I think like, I mean, most people who listen to this know that I'm in the middle of a divorce, but we had been together for such a long time. We had so many years of like a pattern of how that worked for us. And I think when you're in a long-term relationship, it's easy for that to like drop off a bit because you have such a like co-working relationship. It kind of turns into like more of like a co-worker situation. And both of you are completing tasks and doing things and you're worn out and you go like for us we went from infants to like diagnosis of our kids to like services and trying to both be full-time employees, and I just think it's like incredibly challenging to even get yourself to the place where you want to be doing that. And then, you know, on top of that, when do you have the time? Because we're always calculating sleep. If I go to bed at 12 and my daughter gets up at 3 or my son gets up at 4, I'm only running on 4 hours of sleep and I have to make it through 20 hours of whatever, you know, it's crazy. It's really interesting to think about the desire in that way and how it changed so much and just how you fit it in. It's just challenging. As even when you have just neurotypical little kids, they say that those years of parenting are like the hardest time frames for you to connect with your spouse is those like early years, early development years or whatever. And then, you know, I'm divorced or divorcing. And so like the dating and navigating all of that is uber complicated too, because then you're like having to open up the door of your life to someone who may or may not understand. You can't explain our lives to people in words. It does not work.
You
Period.
also can't describe the effect of it as a lifetime.
Yeah.
By having like a couple of dinners that work out. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and just like opening yourself up to someone, opening your kids up to someone, you know how that's gonna go. I'm not a modest person by any means, so like that portion of it is fine for me. It's all the other like interweavings of my feelings about people judging my kids or like opening someone up to learn about them or, you know, whatever. That part of it is more scary to me than like getting naked with someone.
See, I think that is another part of it though. It's like, you know, when I was 20 and getting naked or whatever. But after you've had kids,
yeah,
like you ladies getting back in the game, I have all the respect for you because I am my body's just so different now. I would be so insecure about it. Not even in a modesty way. It's just like, oh, okay, well, this is what I got to offer. Like I have to accept that about myself and love myself. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know. As women in general, as our bodies shift and morph and we're supposed to like stay skinny or stay this way and be perfect. And it's like, I definitely don't have time to be trying to do that. Which, you know, and I feel like for me, I'm 35. A lot of the women in my life who are my age, who are even in marriages or with a partner, they're even like I don't know why. I think it's just because all the kids are getting to a place where they're a little older and they can start worrying about that stuff more. And I'm like, oh, I can't even worry about that. Like that's not on my mind at all. Like, of course, I want to try to stay my idea of staying healthy is like, I need to live forever to support my child. And so that's just another element. Anyway, that just made me think about that. Jen?
So for me, it's a little different. I'm not married. Kaya's dad and I were together for 20 years, but we lived in 2 different countries. And prior to Kaya, there was a lot of back and forth. It was much easier. And even when she was little, I mean, she had more air miles banked in than most people do in their lifetime, just because it's so quick back and forth, and she's a great little traveler. Anyway, as she got older and things changed and things shifted, like I always say to you guys, I don't know how you guys do it, because we agree on absolutely nothing when it came to autism, and this whole journey from like diagnosis to therapies to therapists we agreed on nothing. And I kind of found myself over time, like that sort of replaced the other stuff. And then for me, being kind of sort of doing most of it on my own, all of it on my own, I am now more in the sort of bitter stage towards him about it, so that when I do see him, I don't feel the way that I used to feel, because I had a lot of years tired under me. And,
Yeah.
right. So now for me, I feel different about it with him, because I think I feel a little resentment now towards him, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it was a big shift, and that was hard for him, really hard for him.
And
But
I
it's
think
hard.
that happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Like, even,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I've always said this, like, it's just like, you don't really like that cutesy time when your kid's just a toddler and the worries that you don't have to make the big decisions about school and stuff. For us, that stuff happens immediately. And when you disagree off the bat, it's like you build up a lot of resentment in marriages or with the father or the person you raise your child with. It's hard. But sorry, Ted, what did you say?
Oh no, I was going to say the same thing. It's like the resentment. Our lives with our kids have so many choices, and so that breeds contention if you don't agree, or even if you just don't understand what you're trying to make a decision about, because you're learning on the fly. What you don't know, is this speech therapy going to be good? Is this daycare going to be good? We don't know. We just like roll the dice a lot of times. When you're in that state with your partner where you're trying to make all these decisions, that itself, even outside of the resentment, once you make the choices, puts such a kind of like a weight on your relationship, because you're constantly talking about all of these things all the time, and it's the focus. You have to consciously make a choice to have the focus be on the two of you, and all the other shit to go away. I mean, and if you don't do that, I mean,
well, like you said, it's like you're almost like your business partners. Or I think I was talking to Rach the other day, and I made a comment, like, it's like almost you become each other's respite. Like, it's like, hey, like, you take on the kids tonight so I can go do something. I'll watch like, instead of like you
doing it
going
together
off and doing that together, you're respite for each other, and you kind of start viewing each other like that. Like, oh, you allow me to have a break. You're not getting that time together at all.
Yeah, I'm stuck in that bitter thing right now. I'm really stuck in that right spot. Brought it all back up.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, and I think we've said this so much on the podcast about how much you change as a person after diagnosis, after trying to raise autistic kids. And a lot of times that is jarring to your partner on either side, husband or wife. It's jarring to your partner if you have this pattern of being a certain way and showing up for them and supporting them, and then you don't have an ability to do that anymore. Then it can seem like, what the
well, right after we got back to California, he said, "What happened to you?" And I thought my head was gonna like, what do you mean what happened to me? First of all, you, and then second, I mean, I'm tired. I do it by myself. So the little judgment things that come along the way, just, Timmy, you've been doing this the longest. I mean, you guys are in a real lovebird stage. I don't know if it's a
we all heard
thing
about it
or not, but
19 minutes and 26
19 minutes of it.
I will
So I
applaud
think
again.
it's complicated, and intimacy means different things to different people. There's emotional intimacy, there's physical intimacy. You have to make time for each other. You have to do it. Like, no matter how many barriers there are, or how many roadblocks there are, no matter how exhausted you are, if you don't make time for each other, then there'll be nothing there. Like, we always go through ebbs and flows. We always have, where like we might get, a little distance from each other and grow a little bit apart. And having children, aside from even autism, I mean, we have 4 children, so it's a lot. Even with taking care of the kids when they're little, I mean, you have people touching you all day long and won't leave you alone. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is have someone else touch you at the end of the night. But at the same time, it's like you have to be able to communicate. You and your partner, we're good at communicating now. We weren't good at communicating for a lot of years, so we fought it. But you have to make time for each other. I mean, it sounds so I know it's not easy because at the end of the day that sometimes it's all you have left is each other, you know.
Mhm.
We always seem to find a way to like get back to each other. Sometimes it's just going out to breakfast or hanging out on the couch. My husband's not a great cuddler because it's just never cuddling. It's not his thing. Because
Me
if
neither.
I'm next to him, it's
Give
not
me my
cuddling
space.
anymore.
I didn't mind a cuddle
19
before.
minutes
Now
on
you
your
want to come
turn.
on me on the couch when I have 5
So
seconds
like,
to
yeah,
myself.
no.
Get the away from
Yeah,
me.
give me space. I'll
If
hug
I
the
go,
pillow.
if
Like
I
the
go, if I go to
pillow.
bed with my husband and I'm like, oh, let's lay here together for a few minutes. Like it's just never gonna happen.
Turns into something
It
else.
turns into something every single time. So I don't know. It's hard, you know. And for us, sometimes I think it's different. I mean, I was 22. He was 27 when Alyssa was diagnosed. So like we were young. I don't know. I feel like your mindset is just different at that age. I feel like we were probably more affected when Kara and Lexi were growing up because they took up so much of my time. I worked full time. I drove them back and forth everywhere and still try to navigate the stuff with Alyssa, which sometimes at that stage of time she wasn't like super, super needy. Yeah, and sometimes you just drift apart, but I don't know, I feel like you just gotta find time for each other. And then like we always seem to find our way back to each other. You know, it's hard. We go to bed at different times. I tend to stay up late. He falls asleep early. Alyssa takes over our room. So until she decides to come out of our room's not our room. So it's, you know,
Mhm.
there's so many challenges.
Is that
Then
room for 19 minutes?
we always get back on the upswing eventually. We call them our code word here is dark and stormy nights.
I'm just
I'm
asking
just
for a
thinking you
friend.
should
You
not
can
go for
make
a walk in the woods. Okay. I'm just gonna
Also,
say there should be no
also
walk in the woods.
you need to knock on the door before you open it.
Yeah, solid rule for any
My
human being. Always
my
knock
ni-
on the door.
my 19-year-old found out the hard way.
Yeah.
So she opened the door and it was a dark and stormy, it was a dark and stormy morning. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds so simple and it's really, really hard sometimes, but you have to make each other a priority,
Well, and I
you
think
know,
sometimes
because
it's as simple as like seeing the other person in the room. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
simple acts
definitely.
of or gestures of kindness, like that you actually see what they're doing. If there's a load of laundry
Yeah.
in the freaking dryer for 2 days, fold that shit right up. It'll make a big difference. I mean, it really will. Like simple things that will have your partner drawn to you to want to say thanks.
Fold that laundry, boys,
Maybe
if
by
you want to
taking their
get
shirt
some
off. I'm just
the other
But
clothes off in the washer.
And I think that's the thing too. I mean, I don't know for all women, but for me, like we've talked about love languages before, and like active services is my love language. But
Yeah.
I think for most moms in general, it is so tied to that everyday needing help. And especially for us, like being involved. I don't know how couples do it, the couples where the one spouse takes on all of like the special needs elements. I couldn't do that all on my own. Like I've told you guys before, there's been times I've been halfway through paperwork and I'm like, you got to finish this for me. And that leads to more, and I mean saying like just sex intimacy, but to me, like appreciating my husband
Yeah.
and loving my husband so much more than him buying me flowers. Like the things that men probably think that we want, which is like the hugging, cuddling, which are all nice, but it's like, I need you to help me get through my day first. And
Yeah.
then that. Anyway, Rach, what about you? I know you're going through a hard time and might not talk about this, but I love you.
I love you. You know, I'm in a weird place. I pride myself on being pretty honest and unfiltered here. So I will just say that because we deleted it while you were letting the spider out in the cup in the last episode, did that. I haven't said this yet to the podcast listeners that I asked for a divorce. And recently, very recently, over the course of our podcast, I've talked really openly and even sharing on Planetville and, you know, kind of all over. Billy and I have been honest about our relationship. And so I'm just going to continue that by saying I prepped for this episode nervously and found out all these things about intimacy that sort of validated where we landed. I think intimacy failed in some ways in our relationship because everything in my life became something that I was a caregiver for. Because I think I went too long without help. in certain areas or like didn't acknowledge and seek help in the right things. I think that we had a very sexual relationship because I think we in our marriage needed a release. Like I used to joke that I I say release and look at Jamie Ramos and I can't handle myself.
I'm like a 12-year-old.
I was like, say I can't open it, or I'm gonna open up to this while she's talking about sex, and I'm the only one giggling, but I can't.
PG-13.
Yeah. Listen, I think that we managed a lot of like stress. Stress management came down to like either we're gonna fight about it, or I'm gonna give a job. He's gonna get so relaxed, and then we're gonna like move on. Like it's like I can help you. This helps me because we're not going to argue about stuff because we're filling our time this other way. I felt like we were having like mutual intimacy, but I will say that again, in hindsight, everything is like task. I think that that really affected our relationship. And I know that I'm not alone, which is why I say that. I will also say that like there are so many things that Billy and I went through having started dating when I was 16. I mean, I've shared on this podcast the time in the camper, that summer of early 2000s. I mean, I've really been open and honest and shared about it. Like we grew up together. We became sexual together. Like we had sex first together and then spent 24 years practicing. And in that was infertility. In that was wicked periods for me. Like there are so many different facets to our sex life for me that I took on myself. Whereas for him, he didn't have all that. Like it's just so different. So anyway, I can see clearly how all of those decisions affected my well-being and our relationship. I don't know. If I blacked out and rambled, it's because I blacked out and rambled. You can just have me recut it if that was all shit. But I feel it's typical. I mean, like there is such a high divorce rate in families like ours with all this stress. I would say infertility, then adoption process that was brutal, then feeling like we gave up and becoming parents when we did, and then being on this wild ride as we have been. What is a lot to like recover from while you're still going through the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think all of that has affected us, but also like if I'm carrying that stress, I can't get down and feel like intimate, but I know we need this release so like I can participate. I mean, I don't know. We were doing the best we could.
It's so complicated. And I think women in general carry this physical burden, like Jamie was saying. I wouldn't say burden, but the physical nature of the changes of our body and all the complicated layers that come with that create insecurities or things that are underneath the surface that might not be talked about. That I think men have insecurities as they get older, whatever changes for them, but it's not to the gravity or level that women go through in the same sense just physically. Because like, you know, even recovering from a C-section or having a baby and breastfeeding. And I mean, that's years of your life that a child is physically attached to you, you know?
Well, just the general like society rule that like seems to be about that men look better with age and women get less good.
Look like this.
It's like this podcast. We looked really good in the beginning, and we've got
it's like this podcast.
relax.
It's so separate though. Like I compartmentalized. So like I know if you're a listener, you may not follow us on social, so you may not know that I'm like a little curvy girl. I have had within myself, like as a Rachel, to love myself, even though I've got love handles bigger than my butt cheeks. Like I've worked hard to identify like good parts of myself. I have been able to do that. And yet I have wicked depression where everything that I do is worthless. And I can tell myself at the same time that I'm like, dang girl, you look cute in those flare pants. And I can be totally worn out and totally like drained and still functioning on so many levels. Like it's multifaceted. And then I'm supposed to be able to like get off. Even if we've made the time, can I even relax enough to have anything happen?
Shut your brain off for
it's not
5, 10,
damn
15
likely.
minutes.
And also don't expect anything if it does happen because I'm going to sleep after that. Done. Anyway.
Well, I find for us, it's like we need that physical intimacy to get the emotional intimacy back. You know, it's like, it's just the way it is for us. And when that happens, I feel like it's like everything else kind of falls to the wayside, and then it's
Yeah.
just me and him. And that's when we get that back. So for us, it's really hard to get that portion back without the physical stuff. That is the only way that it works for us, really. But it's hard. It's just, there's so many challenges to it. Mental health plays a huge part in it. Exhaustion
Yeah.
plays a huge part in it. Like, you know, just your frustration with other people in your life play a huge part in it. But at the end of the day, well, not all of our kids, but most people's kids at one time will be gone and grown, and they won't be there. And then it's just you and your partner. And if you've spent your whole life catering to everybody else and kind of letting your partner, you know, fall to the wayside, there's not really much left when everybody else is gone. I mean, Alyssa will clearly always be with us, so we will always have her. But the other kids will be, you know,
She's not the one wondering why it's dark and stormy out, though. That's a different kid altogether.
She's not the one sitting on the other side of the wall. It's really what works for you in your relationship and figuring that out, I think, too. And it is like such a hard thing too, because I think like for me, like more help around the house or in different ways to show that love. But I think as women in general, are good or bad, like our value is so tied up in our like the way we look or our ability to be attractive to someone else that like we also need that validation too. So it's like sometimes you need to hear that you're pretty, or you need to like, you know, say you look nice today and like genuinely mean it. I always joke, my husband's very sweet, but he'll always do it. I swear he does it on purpose when I'm like disgusting looking, and I'm like, buddy, I know what you're trying to do. I appreciate you being nice right now, but I haven't showered in like 2 days. My hair's like, I stink like who knows what. Like, but it is so much of that. And then having patience with your partner, like it is hard because you don't want to ever feel undesired, I think, on both sides for both people in the relationship. But there are just times where like, especially when this life like is really hard. Like my daughter just went through her diagnosis and it was really hard for me. She got diagnosed with a blood disease, and it's so different than autism, but a lot of it brought back a lot of like PTSD triggers for me. It was hard going through something else that's lifelong, and then also like bringing in a whole new element of like medical things and big decisions and all that stuff that came with it. I can't even like, I need intimacy to not be sexual for that time. Like, and that's me. Like, and so I need my husband to like step in and help me in other ways and be there more like for me, my mental health wise, and assure me things are going to be okay, or just in general, let me know we're in this together. So it's just, what does it mean to you at the time, and like being honest with your partner about that. I don't think I'm always very good about that. Like sometimes it's just like, back off, buddy. But also
there's
that's
always like
too.
this link though, that like intimacy for me has to do with that safety and like security as well. And it isn't about like financial security or any of the other securities that you may think. It's just literally like, I'm gonna hold you, you can let your guard down. It like,
I got you.
It's like safety of it all, that if I can't let go of the control of something yet in my process of something that's coming at me, like, don't want me right now, just give me 1 second. Or like, make it a little slower, make it a little less, make it a little warmer, make it a little. We say it longer, and I'm open a lot in this episode. Should be the drinking game. If Andy Cohen redoes this episode, it's going to be that the keyword.
Well, and understanding your partner, that's really it. Like for James, she doesn't like it's hard work for you to do physical touch, and like understanding that. I mean, from what you're saying, I'm not saying that about you,
I'm not that bad, but I'm just not the type of person like, hey, give me a quick hug. I can't sit there with someone's arm around me watching a show.
Yeah. Like you would have to be like, I get where you're at with it. But I think and I didn't mean to put words in your mouth, but you know what I mean.
No, it was just funny.
Understand your partner.
After Rachel, like,
don't touch it. Don't sit next to James on the couch and put your arm around. Understanding what your partner actually wants from you, because you might be a person who wants to be doing acts of service, but your partner doesn't. They don't accept that as their form of what they need from you. You have to understand what they want and what you can give, and balancing that out. If your partner can't give you that, explaining to them practical ways of how they can show up for you to make you feel special or wanted, or feel close. And it all builds on itself. If you aren't emotionally attached, physically attached, and understanding each other, if you're living together anyway, cohabitation rules that we all make for ourselves. And just like seeing your partner in the room, none of the other stuff really works. I mean, it just doesn't. It ends up failing. You kind of have to like work hard at all of those pieces at different times. It doesn't mean that you constantly need to be banging it out. Sorry for the children. Some days,
Unintended.
I think this one got the explicit.
I gave a warning.
It was an accident.
It might mean that sometimes you're more physically intimate and other times you're more showing up for the person by doing tasks and paperwork and driving the kids places and all that stuff.
And sometimes I let my husband give me long hugs, even though I want to push him away.
She lets me do that too.
Yeah.
I'll take a quick hug. I always joke, like, I'm like, if I'm the initiator, it's fine. But for some reason, I'm like, I don't know, I'm claustrophobic.
That attention piece too. It's like sometimes it's just holding hands, even for 30 seconds, like, or walking by. Maybe don't do this to Jamie, but like walking by and giving you a quick kiss on the head or something like that. Sometimes,
that's fine. That's great. Kiss, quick kiss is good.
And then on the opposite, it's like my husband's not very needy and he's not super affectionate, but then there's other times where he wants that, and I'm thinking he doesn't want that because he's normally just kind of like, you really just got to pay attention and not make assumptions sometimes about what the other person cares about or doesn't care about, because sometimes that can change. Because sometimes I'm a very affectionate person, and other times I don't want you to touch me. And other times I require a lot of attention. I'm very needy, and other times I don't want to be bothered. It's very tricky.
I think that's something that's
I mean, it might be because of all the different personalities,
He's
but
a
you really
good
got to have
man.
like the Kim code and really be able to figure that out.
The Kim code.
Yeah, so it's just, I feel like that part of it's hard. It's just not letting people fade too far into the background, whether it's you, or your partner. It's just, it's so easy to become consumed with everything else in your life, because we're used to them being there and being the the stability and all that, and it goes both ways, obviously. So I feel like that's something that's like, it's really hard to navigate.
Okay, so I was doing some research about this because I was too nervous to be able to figure out what I was going to say, which is fine. My research happened on the TikTok, which is obviously where you go for like code B sex ed, right? So I want to let everybody know that this is what I learned. And it kind of hit for me in so many ways. And just to jump back to Kim's point, I feel like Billy and I worked through some stuff in family therapy, and we are talking about that pretty often right now, that like we both need to show up and give each other the chance to be different, if that's what the expectation is. Like, I cannot continue to like respond to him as I would expect while also expecting him to change. And if he does, how would I see that if I'm still the snark about like have this expectation? Do you know what I'm saying? But I did this TikTok. I did this TikTok research for the sex ed grade B, and it says not prioritizing quality time together if you're not feeling how or sharing how you feel and your sort of emotions, which so much of what we've all had to talk about with our spouses or significant other or the baby daddy is focused on these topics. It's not like I can talk to you about my general Rachelness when I have to discuss with you this IEP meeting or this doctor appointment, lacking physical touch and affection, not communicating honestly and openly, and then losing attraction to one another and like cohabitating instead of co-creating. And I just feel like it's all these things are listed as like the top 5 things about losing intimacy or like the common intimacy issues. And we've all just discussed them. I mean, it's just typical. It's like, it's typical to have things affect the other things. So with that, I say the last thing I found on the internet was this saying: may your coffee, pelvic floor, intuition, and self-appreciation be strong. And that is the most amazing mom blessing of all.
I love it. I saw this meme that a kid did for school, and it was like, what you know about marriage or relationships? And it was like a little kid. And he's like, tell your wife that they look beautiful, even if they look like a dump truck. It's just a golden rule.
I bet his mom is so proud.
Yeah, even if they look like a dump truck. Oh my gosh. It does me. Intimacy. It's tough. It's a lot of moving parts.
I think no matter, even if it's like not romantic intimacy, or if it's like with your family or with your friends, allowing people in is really hard, I think, in this life, but it will help you in so many ways. And I feel like the biggest thing I think that always comes up in our podcast, and the reason we're all here together, is isolation and how hard that can be. And even finding someone in your life, and using the word intimate seems weird to me because it feels like it's just a sex thing, but it's not. But finding someone in your life that you can express those things to, and have a relationship with, where you can talk about things that are hard, and have just that closeness with, like, having someone in your life besides just our kids. Because I think we get so wrapped up with our kids. Like, I'm my son's person. He's with me a lot of the time. I mean, outside of school and stuff like that. But having those relationships in our lives really can help. And I also know on the other end that it's so difficult. I think back to when my son was a toddler and going through that time. And even though I had a person by my side, it was still extremely hard to find any type of intimacy in the relationship, physical, emotional, sexual, because you're on the edge all the time. And so, like Kimmy said, like just trying to find that in each other, and just taking that time to like acknowledge each other. And I know, like, within my marriage, I need to be better about that. My husband said this is gonna be like the one episode he listens to, and so give me a lot of crap.
Hey,
but I need to be better about that, and like validating him, and I am incredibly grateful for my husband. But like, it's just hard in this life. Like, I just I don't know. At the end of the day, after you've like scrubbed poop out of a carpet, and you've gotten screamed at by a child, and you've been filling out like 5 stacks of paperwork, it's really hard. But then you also can lose your humanity in that, and I think that humanity can lie within that intimacy.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Jamie.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. I really do.
Well, I feel like sometimes it just feels like there's not enough time in the day.
No, sure.
Yeah.
Just
especially when there's
anything.
somebody not sleeping, like there really isn't time in the day.
And you have such a longer day. It feels like your day's been forever, but you also have no time, and you're a zombie.
Mombi. That should be our next year.
We have I think I just told Rachel the story the other day that we used to share a room with Lexi. Oh, it's always Lexi.
Poor girl.
And so her bed was like a toddler bed, and she was like 2, and she was in the room with us. So one night she wakes up, we're being intimate. We hear this little tiny voice go, "Daddy, what are you doing to mommy?" Oh, I'm just like immediately want to laugh. So I'm just like,
So
I'm just
you
like
freeze.
covering my mouth because I can't even like, I can't with that little voice. And and he goes, "Oh, we're exercising." Literally, she's quiet for like 30 seconds, and we're not moving. Like, we're just now frozen. Like, he's not moving. I'm not moving. We're like, just please go back to sleep. And then she's like, "Why are you naked?"
Oh no, this is too much.
These are the challenges you do. These are the challenges that you have to try to navigate when you have so many kids and they're all little forever. I think he was like, "Oh, we were hot," and I don't even know, but I'm just like, oh my God.
We're just unplug right now.
Doesn't remember this story, guys. It's fine. She has no memory of this. Of course,
it may have kicked back into her memory recently.
I know.
Or when she listens to this podcast.
We're just like, I told her the story before. She thought it was hilarious. But she used to also do, like, again, Alyssa has never slept in the past 20 years. So like that's also a thing that made things super challenging. And for like at least 10 years, I had to always be up when she was up. So our code would be like, "Oh, mommy has a headache," which I did used to get frequent headaches, shockingly. I used to get migraines, and it would be that I was going to lay down, so just don't go in the room. And Lexi would lay in front of the door and just scream my name. She couldn't get in, the door was locked. She would be like, "I want my mommy." And then she'd be like, "Mommy, mommy." Would not stop. It's really hard to.
Neil's like, I do too.
Neil. not care. He did not care, but I'm just like, oh my God. It does make, I said, there is a lot of extra challenges, I think, when you're navigating special needs and no sleep.
Yes.
I mean,
1,000%.
Yeah.
and I am not a morning person.
Except for
I
the
mean, I
dark
was
and
the other
stormy
morning.
Yeah.
I was the other morning, but it was more
It was
like
a dark and stormy morning.
It was more than like new.
generally speaking, I'm not a, don't wake me up early, buddy.
This is the best. You're welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the table, everybody. I hope you enjoy this
If this is your first episode listening to us,
oh God.
welcome.
Next series is going to be called Sexcapades.
We are not.
I'm joking.
Thanks everyone for listening, and have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Lock those bedroom doors, people.
Hang the sock on the knob.
Thank you for joining us at the table for this episode of the Table for Five No Reservations podcast. Big thank you to all of our supporters. If you would like to become a supporter, please check out the description of this episode, where you will also find episode information, how to sign up for our newsletter, and find links to us individually. Join us next Monday for more, and while you wait, check out our content on Facebook and Instagram. If you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you listen. To contact us, you can email us at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next week. Can't wait to sit with you again.